Welcome to Shelf Life. My guest today is the gentleman who wrote this book, When a Man Loves. Not when a man loves a woman, when a man loves.
Yes.
And he's Pete Kennedy. Pete, welcome to Shelf Life.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Man, this little book here, them say you mustn't judge things by the size, right? It's not a big book. And, when I took up the book at first, it says, a lifestyle and leadership most men will never experience. I kind of expected it to be a book about leadership, which it is. But this little book is about you.
Yeah.
And it packs a heck of a punch. But before we talk about the book, tell me about Pete. You're growing up, because I think my audience will be fascinated by the life you've lived.
Yeah, definitely. Just a little boy out of a little town in Kingston called Almontown. Born and raised there. Inner city, just like everyone else, having some of the struggles that we struggle in Jamaica. But one of the things I always say is, as an inner city boy, some of the things I went through was because my friends didn't have it. So I really don't want to take the blessing away from my parents.
Okay.
I never had a need for food. Never had a need for clothing, had shoes, right? But all the additional things, right? That we never owned a car. My dad worked at JPS, so he had the company vehicle that he drove. But the necessities my parents provided, and I didn't wear shoes because my friends never had shoes. But loved it. Born and raised there, went to micro practice in all-age school right up there by Michael's
Well, back up before you get to micro practicing, because people need to understand that when you say you're born in the inner city, I'm talking about coming from the one bathroom for the community, tenement yard. Right? And I think it's important, because a lot of people leave out them details, when them talk about them born in the inner city. In your book, you went deep into the details.
Very deep, very deep. And that's one of the things that people really admire about the book is, in this book, I'm not talking about the beautiful trees of Jamaica. Right after I talk about the inner city, I say, you hear the blowing of the horns and the bus conductor, I say, oh, wait, I'm giving you inner city life.
And the gunshot, them a lick at night time.
You understand what I'm saying? So I never saw beaches and I never saw carrying goats, and my inner city life was truly noise, somebody a cuss, gunshot, or you're playing outside and creating your story. But one of the things I really wanted to highlight in the book is, within all of that, we were missing strong leadership. And that's where the change comes. Right out of that inner city, yard, we moved to Almontown, in that little area, which is very close. I call it the very same.
Right.
And I mentioned as well, 2 years later, Hurricane Gilbert. Never forget that experience.
I don't think any of us will ever forget Hurricane Gilbert.
Hurricane Gilbert came. Right after that, I got the opportunity to go to high school. And it's so funny, it's within the last 2 years, people know that I really passed for Jamaica College, and it wasn't for KC.
Because you're a Fortis man through and through.
I'm a Fortis man through and through. And that's because that's where the ending love came. But the true high school experience started at Jamaica College. I played Pepsi for JC, and I spent so much time at Hope Gardens that my mom was like, look here, it's not gonna work. You have guidance down North Street, so you're not going back. It was no question.
Because your brother had gone to North Street.
Yes, my brother.
And you specifically didn't want to follow his footsteps.
Didn't. And for one reason, I just didn't want somebody hovering me saying, hey, don't do that, don't do this, don't. I just wanted my own free will, my own freestyle. Nobody could come back and share
as
anything.
The youngest of 4 girls, I totally understand, but I did go to the same school. But I think there was enough distance between us that they weren't there to hover over me.
Yeah. But you know what's funny? I didn't even understand that. Going to KC in the very beginning stages, I wouldn't be on the same campus. Because he was at North Street, and the very first, second, and third form at KC is at Melbourne, which is Ellingston Road. So we weren't even in the same. I would just say KC, and that's it. No. And it's so funny that every other friend, like I mentioned in the book, went to KC. It was one neighbor who lived directly beside me who went to Woolmer's, right? And I just went uptown, and my mom said, nah. And this is why my mom somewhat saw what I had, even up until her death, but because she wasn't able to articulate it in a way, whenever I shared it, she said, yes, but she wasn't able to say, hey, you know, you did that well or something. It's when she said, oh my gosh, you know what I'm saying? Which was good, because that was like, mommy's on my side, yeah.
And from what you're saying in the book, you had both your mother and father, which was not necessarily the case for most people in the inner city. But your mom was still the one who led, because your father was, you didn't see him. In fact, you referred to him as not the mama. Not the mama. You remember that cartoon, The Dinosaurs? That's what we called him, not the mama, because we, as boys, we just know he passed us to go upstairs, to, you know, when he came from work or drove the vehicle, and when he was leaving, he would pass us again. There was no interaction. There was no, you know, my dad hardly spoke. I told people in the book that, you know, the first time he went to a wedding reception, and he took me with him, I didn't believe that was my dad. The man talked the whole night. And if you think about it, think about us Jamaican men. You put us on a street corner, you can't shut us up. Bring us home, and you find out the difference. And this is where we struggle as men. Right. Because we're living two lives. I want to be vocal, but then in my household, how do I do it and still keep control? Do you think some of that has to do with the stereotype that we've been given, where the woman's strong? And I always take serious, and this is really segueing now, by the way, but I'm coming back. I always take serious objection when people say, oh, but the wife. But you know, it's so the wife wanted. I'm like, no, there are two of us. There are two of us. You know, the decisions aren't just made by me. There are two of us, because that whole stereotype is not my situation. But not only that, it's an easy way of us escaping to have the conversation. Yes. Just say the wife. Just say it's fine. Go ask your mother. Okay. Yeah, it's always on your mother. Yeah. Now, you said that, and this is a statement that I found controversial, and some people going to find controversial. I believe Jamaica's music, society, culture, and men do not set up youth for success. It was good old dancehall music. Explain that. The reason I say that is when we talk about music, and I've listened to many artists in Jamaica and outside of Jamaica, music is an art. And as music and an art, people also write music, just as we are authors, from our experience, things we go through. We share these things in regards to, this is my journey. Doesn't necessarily mean that you and I need to take up this song and make it our lifestyle. And I say that because in our inner cities in Jamaica, we do not have leaders like myself and you who can look at a youth and say, hey, that's a great song, let's dance. Yeah. You mean like the one you referenced, Nuff Gal, Long Gal in a Bongo? That very same one, right? No, Judith, right? If you think about it, you know Almontown. How far is Jungle from Almontown? Right How far is Rima from Almontown? Round the corner. How far is South from Almontown? Every single area. Cause at that time, Beenie Man was with Shocking Vibes. Shocking Vibes was in Anatown. Right. So he was singing of that community. Right. I'm a backyard. I played soccer in Rima. I played soccer in Jungle because I played for Central Kingston Corner League side. So, you know, you have to play the surrounding communities. So when Beenie Man sing that song, it's like I knew it every single line. And you took it to heart. And it became my lifestyle. What made it worse was, this is where understanding who you are. What made it worse, was the type of individual I am, I attract people easily. So now, if I'm a young man who's walking the street and I just finished a soccer game and 2-3 girls walk up and say, hey, a nice, and they one just bend down and start taking off your socks. And that is your gal in a bongo. And you just left the street corner where your friends them are talking about having multiple girls. You just seen the guy you emulate or that you think is a role model passing a Clark's and him just leave one baby mother yard and go up next yard. And you are having this do to you with no effort. To you, that's life. I am succeeding, right? But it then later on, as you can see in further chapters, set me up for failure as well. Yes, it did set you up for failure because eventually you left Jamaica. Yeah. And you came to the States. And you were in Chicago. I'm going to tell you, when I got to that part of the book, I was like, wow, boy, I was a gangster. Like, me no mean baby gangster, I mean real gangster. You know, and that your life took that turn. Because you said that your brother Marlon stepped in pretty much as the leader that you emulated. And he tried to keep you out of this direction, but he was in Jamaica with your father, and you were up here with your mother, and you were in Chicago. So you get where?
I get to, but here's one of the things that Marlon couldn't do so much. Marlon had actually started to elevate and grow in the military.
Right.
And he couldn't associate himself so much that if I got in trouble, that he would be linked, because he has family. So he was like, yo, Pete, don't say nothing in my name. Right? So when I was doing things with Interaction in Jamaica, everything was Noel Augustus Kennedy. I couldn't put Marlon Kennedy.
And by interaction, we mean illegal interaction.
Illegal interaction.
We're talking gang stuff.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, I'm sending this down, I'm doing it. My dad is doing all of this, picking up this. You get what I'm saying? The only thing that kind of turned with my brother, so to speak, is we were looking to, you know, get a vehicle and, you know, just kind of helping with certain things there. But other than that, everything was my dad. Everything. I mentioned I put $3,000 on my mother's little coffee table, and she'd take our crochet. She didn't even touch it. She'd take our crochet and cover it and say, Pete, come get your money.
Yes.
Working 2 jobs in the snow in Chicago. So when we talk about really dynamics and change, all this time, my parents, my brother, saw leadership. My dad saw it a little bit late. When he said, I grew up and I become my own big man, I do my thing, and I still wanted that connection, but he was like, how do I break that emotional barrier and say, son, come on in?
Because because part of what you're talking about here in When a Man Loves is, I was fortunate, by the way.
Yeah.
I had Daddy Supreme. Like, my daddy was just like, nobody to me like my daddy, okay? He was one of the best daddies that ever walked the face of the earth, bar none. All right? So I was fortunate, but I also knew people who weren't that fortunate. And who, my father, I knew loved me. I never questioned it. It was never something that could cross my mind that my father did not love me. But I knew so many people like you who, in retrospect, you realize your father loved you, but they never said it. They never really showed it in a tangible way. You had to kind of assume it or figure it out that, well, since there's a roof over my head and he's providing food, he must love me. Right? So all of this in your life, how did you end up turning that to this place where you became this man who understands what it is to love and who changed his life so much that you are now a coach, a life coach, leadership coach, and teaching men and young boys what it is to love and what that love can do?
The aha moment came when I went home one day from lunch. This was the real aha moment. Everything else I was getting inclination. Went home for lunch. I worked just 7 minutes from home. I was managing one of the biggest banks that's in the U.S.
And still running your...
Still running around.
Still running your
drugs. I
drugs.
was a deacon in the church, armor bearer.
And still running.
Still running around because I was programmed that way. So get home. And when I get home, Judith, there's a U-Haul truck in my driveway. And, you know, didn't bother me because we lived in a neighborhood where me and my neighbors get along. The type of person I am, I talk to everybody. So I figured it's one of my neighbors. Get to the front door, and the front door is cracked open. So now the Jamaican kicking at me, who are going at my house. Went round the back. And when I get around the back, there's a sliding door that is transparent. You can see through it. And there's 2 guys moving out my bedroom set. But I've stolen in the past. I was once a thief. And I know so thief look when them move your stuff. No man, a smile and a joke. And it seemed casual. So now I'm like, this is strange. I go in the house, 3 minutes later, find out that my wife at the time is moving out without my knowledge. Moving out. When I say I drop, like what? Moving out. And I literally saw myself like this. And if you think about it, if I were to get up and walk like this, I'm imbalanced. I can't function like this.
Right.
Get what I'm saying? And in that spectrum, I saw myself business-wise, I was growing. I was knocking heads in the business, making it happen, growing. Kind of, you know, using now the leadership piece, but only at the professional level. Doing it. And personally, I was dying. Dying, and I stopped literally saying, and this is why when I say people sing songs, they're art, but when you can connect to it, Michael Jackson says, man in the mirror, that's when I really saw, literally when people say, look in the mirror, and telling you like, Judith, I saw myself in a mirror like, yo, Pete, this ain't gonna work. You
saw everything. You saw the gunshot that you got. You saw everything, your whole gangster life.
Everything.
And you saw what you could be. So talk to me about the John Maxwell connection, because the John Maxwell connection was a big part of who you now are and how you got to this place of lifestyle and leadership.
When we have to accept people in our lives, and I want to say, I'm going to call his name, big up to Bishop Paul Little, who introduced John Maxwell to me. Saw this thing in me as I was bouncing around, and he says, hey, I want to develop you guys. John Maxwell is a Christian first, pastor. So he was doing some work within the church and, put out this book, Developing the Leader Within You with a course. And, the Church of God at the time said, hey, you know what, we're going to use this and try to help develop our ministers and leaders. He brought it to the church. It was only 3 of us that sat in that specific small session. And when I tapped into it, I was like, yo, Bishop, this is it. He's like, what? I said, I want to become a motivational speaker. He's like, yo, really? Just talk to people? I said, yeah, man. I said, look, every time I talk or whatever,
people listen.
People listen. I said, it could be a joke, people listening.
People listen.
I could be telling people to get up and go take up trash, people listening. So the moment I grab that mic, people are listening. I want to do this stuff. He's like, all right, cool. How do we kind of... And then, we have to love people for the moment. I love him dear to death, but he was there for that season.
Right.
Because then when John developed and I stepped out and I started digging more into John, and, things are kind of like, hold on, you're moving. Now this started to happen.
Right. Yeah, the gap.
Get what I'm saying? So now I started to learn and grasp and I'm coming back with data. I'm coming back with facts. Yo, let's do this, let's do that. It's proven. It's not Pete idea. Here's facts based on a church who is successful. This is what they do. And so I'm like, all right, I guess this is just for me, right? So I started to do that. I joined the John Maxwell team. And I'll tell people, if you want anything in life, and you know this too, Judith, you have to invest in yourself. And that means financially as well. It ain't going to come free. And if you get it for free, that means it's not your passion.
You're preaching to the choir. Let me tell you, I go to literary festivals. There's so much that I do. Even my Antarctica exhibit. You've been to the exhibit. Yeah. You can't believe. I'm sure you can imagine how much money was invested into that exhibit.
When I looked around the room, I'm like, all of these her pictures? Like, how did she
frame them? This? Everything.
Yes.
Because
with little notes too.
You have to invest in yourself. Yes. And I tell authors, and I'm going to say this to the camera, if you are not willing to invest the $250, $300 to go to the Harlem Book Fair or to go to the Caricon or whatever it is, so that you can learn and you can grow and people can find you. Then you're not investing in you only have a craft that you don't believe in. No. And you have to do that. So you invested in yourself. And that's a big part of one of the things that you tell people here is that they have to invest in themselves. And I really love how the book is laid out, because you have like these worksheets in there, so you can kind of stop and, it's small, but it takes you a while to go through it, because if you really want to do it properly, you have to
Here's one of the
go
things,
through and do it.
That I learned as a young Jamaican Christian man. The Bible says, speak and it shall manifest into life. But the part that we're missing in the entire story is that until you write it down,
you have to write it down.
It will never really come to fruition. Manifestation and coming to fruition is different, You understand what I'm saying? I can speak to say I want to live in the United States. And you can come to the United States, but what happens from there?
You have to write it down, and you have to fill out an application. You have to actually do something.
You know what I'm saying? When you get here, you got to fill out a piece of paper and do all of these little things. But you and I can attest, the moment we write things down, the moment you start putting these things on paper, aligned with the vision and the image that has given you, it then starts to...
It starts to fall into place.
Just fall right into place.
I'm going to jump to your next level leadership and love, because I want to actually say these. Limit your extended resources. You talk about, and you're talking to men now and leading. Because you know what? Especially in today's world, it seems like us women, we're very aggressive, Women are very aggressive. We go for what we want.
That's because of how we've toxicized your experience.
We have had to be aggressive. To break glass ceilings, we've had to be loud. We've had to push. We've had to hit. We've had to fight.
Yes, I agree.
And so now we aren't taking no for an answer anymore. Those days are done.
We're
not taking
no.
right? But what it has done, I think, is to a lot of men, it has made them step back.
Because they're not setting their standards.
Right. And so all of what you have in this book, I think is so vital, you know. Limit your extended resources. In other words, know how to use them. Lead with love.
Yes.
You know, very, very important that men learn to lead with love, not with bullyism. I used to say to people that respect for me has to be earned. I can respect your position as the pastor or as the prime minister or whatever. But respecting your position doesn't mean I respect you.
Come on. I agree.
Right. And so, you know, you have to earn that. And that seek therapy and coaching. I'm so glad that you talk about that.
One of the best decisions I've made in my life.
Because a lot of men will not go anywhere near therapy. They feel that they know it.
Most of my clients, the very first time I bring it up, here's what they respond. Nothing wrong with me.
You know what? I actually had somebody say, a gentleman, and I do some life coaching, and I had a gentleman actually say that if him can't fix for him marriage, then nobody can fix it.
And that's what
and at that point, I was like, okay, get your divorce. This is your point to get your divorce, when you feel that only you can fix it.
Now, before you read on, when it comes to marriage, and I want to say this as well, is that when it comes to marriage, one of the things I learned in the dissolution of marriage therapy, I ran from the sheriff for 3 months when he was trying to serve me my divorce papers. He caught me in the trunk of the car taking out groceries, right? And I realized I was holding on because, you know, we grew up, you know, divorcing. Yeah, Christian, I
had that conversation with somebody 2 days ago.
I'm a beer. How could I get divorced? You get what I'm saying? And I learned that as a Jamaican young man and as a married young man, if I don't have people around me, which is the same business mindset we're talking about, putting people around me, which is the same mindset. If I did not have mindset, like-minded people, as well as marriages I can see that work, it's very likely my marriage will fail.
You talk about getting an accountability partner, developing strengths, and leading with love, integrity, and honesty and trust. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, when a man loves. So before we wrap up, where do we go from here with this? Actually, before you answer me, I envision you in Jamaica, back in Almontown, back in Hannahtown, out in the communities, serving this up like a good meal.
That's the plan. I want to say thank you to Patricia. I already have somebody in Almontown working these books like crazy. They're selling like hot bread in Almontown. Every opportunity I get, I send about 20 copies, which is already 10 or 15 copies already pre-ordered. I mean, they paid for it. And I'm just giving back that to the community to say, hey, here's somebody that you can look at. And many times we just don't have that example. So for me, the next move is to take this book to the level where individuals as men, a mom, a brother, a sister, a wife can say, hey, we can do this. And here's an example of how you can do it. And when we actually tie that back, one of the things that I truly want to do, Judith, is I'm 42 years old. And I haven't seen the entertainment industry in Jamaica have any major impact. And that's because we're scared of losing money, or we're scared of what may happen. And we will not lose, we will gain more, because then people will buy more notes and art and have the leadership to follow up. And here's what I'm saying. I would love to have a mastermind class. I'm working with Agent Sasko on it, who you know I brought here for the book launch.
Can I tell you I'm a Sasko fan?
Oh, I'm a Sasko fan too.
I'm a Sasko fan.
Big up Sasko.
So where do we go from here? Because I'm thinking workshop. Is there a workshop that goes with this book that you are developing?
Yes. So there is a workshop that's actually in the works right now that specifically speaks to the book and those additional activities in the back. But I do have individual or personalized workshop seminars, one-on-one coachings, that if you reach out to me, because I might write something, but then as you understand, we're all created with uniqueness. But you might need some guidance. I can help you based on your path to kind of get that going. And I have a couple of clients that are actually coming down the pike with this. Here's what's going to happen. Myself and a few others that I'm working with right now, we're going to be the John Maxwells of the Caribbean.
Nice. I love it.
We're going to be. People say to me right now, Pete, where have you been? And I say, I've been always here. It's just that I've been working underground, getting this together. Now it's here. Because a lot of people are like, yo, where have you been? Where have you been? So that tells me that
there is a hunger. and a need for something like this. And my husband and I, we are facilitators at Jamaica Youth for Christ. I think everybody in the world knows that by now. And this is something that I would love to bring for our men there. Because we work with a lot of inner city kids. And most of them aren't even kids anymore, because our Youth for Christ, we have people up to mid-30s there, you know. But they're for people like me, them is still youth.
Me too, me too.
But to be able to bring this kind of information, this kind of leadership, this kind of thing where men can understand that love is important, and it's not, you're not soft if you love.
No.
As a matter of fact, you're tough if you love.
There you go. You're much tougher. You're not losing any man card. So the next thing I'm saying, this man card macho thing we hold on to, guys, throw it away.
Yeah, throw it away, man. My father had one boy. And by the time the dust settled with his second wife and everything, it's 5 girls in race. Okay? It can't be easy. Can't be easy to raise 5 girls, you know.
Yeah. And to hear one of the youngest, you know, and we all revere him so much.
We all revered Daddy.
Wow.
Because my father would get up out of his bed. You could go to the party, you know, but him picking you up. Him dropping you off and him picking you up until you got to a certain age. And even at that age, nobody could come to the house to pick you up to go anywhere if him never know them. And I don't just mean know that, oh, that is Pete. I mean, them come to the house and know them parents, know where they live. He had a thing where he said, anybody going to kill off my children on the road in the night, it must be me. It mustn't be somebody else, because then I'm going to have to kill off somebody else and end up in prison. My father, I don't remember him taking time off from work for sick. He never bought clothes, because everything was about his children. And it was the kind of love that you talk about in here, where he planned for us. You know, he would get up on a Sunday. You would know that you're going somewhere special, because you would wake up to the smell of chicken early in the morning, or rice and peas. So you know, piling us all in the car. And so when I read this book and I read where you're coming from to where you are now with your lovely family. And how you interact with your lovely family. And the fact that you have decided to share all of that information with us openly and honestly, I think is an absolutely wonderful thing. We're wrapping up. Last words.
First, I'd like to say, continue the great work that you guys are doing. Definitely appreciate it, and thank you for having me. But the last words I would want to say is, if there's anything that you can do in this world, is find out who you are. When you do that, the very thing, I was sharing with someone yesterday that I remember they used to show us these footprints and say, you know, this little thing say, follow the footprints of Jesus. And I said, but what if Jesus wore a size 7 and I wore a size 9? If my footprint goes over that, I just covered the whole of Jesus' footprints, right? And I was like, but is that what it truly means? No. Well, he was saying, I've given you an idea of what you should do to be successful. Create your own. And that is why we all have different fingerprints, right? And I shared earlier, this lady researched me yesterday, and there was 3 Pete Kennedys, but there's 1 Pete A. Kennedy with these fingerprints. When you identify who you are, accept it, thrive it, loving it. And that is why people say, boy, you're crazy. It's cool, because this is going to be crazy Pete. I'm going to die crazy Pete, but you're going to remember this Pete.
See? Accept it, love it. Ladies and gentlemen, when a man loves, a lifestyle and leadership most men will never experience. Fantastic book, wonderful speaker. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I hope you have too. I'll see you again next week, same place, same time, where we get a chance to see what else I have on my shelf, right here on Shelf Life. Walk good.